Hey everybody, it is a beautiful winter day, which unfortunately I'm sure is not the case for a lot of you. This winter has been particularly harsh pretty much everywhere that I've heard from. I know we have family up in New York, so up the east coast of the United States, that are still getting slammed by snow, whereas here, well, it's actually starting to feel like spring again. And well, with this nice weather and it's finally not windy outside, I thought this would be a good time to record an updated cold hardy citrus tour. So, kind of show you guys how all the plants are doing. A lot of familiar faces out here. And you might notice we're in a completely different scene, a whole different environment here because this is our first tour on the new property. So this is a residential property. We have about half an acre here where a lot of it is going towards, our citrus breeding and testing efforts and our nursery and everything. And I'll kind of show you guys some of the stuff we're building up for that. But essentially, we did move out of the farm property where we were leasing some land, and we had all of these trees temporarily planted in fabric pots, which a lot of you guys may remember, and a lot of people asked us questions about. Well, I'll do a separate video on that, but those helped us essentially perfectly transition all of these trees to their new home while they were dormant. And now things are slowly waking up across the board, at least with some of our other plants like our elderberry and pear. But the citrus will follow soon. I actually don't want them to follow too soon because we are still seeing some cold nights. But let me show you, because we did filter through a lot of these trees and picked a lot of our favorites. There are a few varieties that you won't be seeing here because we really wanted to prioritize how we use the space and what we planted in the future. So without any further ado, we will get into things. So I'm pretty excited to show you guys the start of, so this side of the yard here, we have, it's all trifoliate orange hybrids for the most part, different seedling selections. The other half, when we get to it, has a lot more true citrus and pepita hybrids and things like that. So there's some rough organization. You'll see I tried to keep things grouped together in some sort of way. It's not perfect, but it's something. But first, we have the Citramon. So this is your lemon trifoliate orange hybrid, looking really good, proving itself in another winter here. I should say we saw probably anywhere between 10 and 12 degrees Fahrenheit as our low here, so pretty similar to last winter, except I did notice we had a lot more time just near or below freezing than last winter. Pair that with all the winds and the sun that we got in between, very harsh winter for our area. So still a pretty tough winter, and Citramon has not struggled one bit. I found other people agree too that at least in these warmer, I should say a cooler zone 8 or these warmer zone 7s, Citramon does not seem to struggle here. So I would suspect it could hold its ground in a zone 7A. Don't quote me on that, but perhaps give it a try if that's where you live. Next up, we have the Tricitradia. These are looking really good. Very slender growth, but very vigorous plant. I mean, these are second-year plants going into their third season, and they have absolutely exploded with growth. It's actually really surprising because I grafted these pretty late in the season the first year, and they just took off. They endured a pretty harsh winter as small plants, and well, they're doing great. You know, they're not the tastiest variety, although they do make a good lemonade, actually. But I've always loved Tri. I think it's such a cool and rare hybrid. Which we do have some seedling Tri trees that we have here. You guys might recognize this. This is Tri XL. So this is our seedling selection, likely a Citrumelo hybrid. And well, it's never struggled in our last couple of winters we've had here because it's just so enormously vigorous. It puts on so much growth that thickness really allows it to get through some pretty cold temperatures. And I know Rare Grows New Jersey has some of our seedlings that he's testing, and I believe Tri XL survived up there down to 0 degrees as a small tree. It did take some damage, but it was a small plant, so especially as it gets some size, as they tend to do, it can do really well, actually. In front of it, we have our unifoliate swingle seedling selection here, which you can see all the way up to the top. It's looking really, really good. Despite how slender it is, because that does tend to make a difference. The thicker they can get, the sooner, the better they will take the cold as young plants. But this one's done really well, actually. And I did select it because it was mostly unifoliate and bifoliate, and it looked very distinguishable, and still does, from your standard swingle. Now the only thing is sometimes individual plants late in the season will push out a little bit of late growth, and that'll get zapped by the cold, but you can see the rest of the plant's doing really good. But really lanky plant there, so that'll be interesting to see what kind of fruit that's going to want to put out. We have the Iva swingle here. These put on some really nice growth. These are, I think, first year going into second year trees. So those look really, really good, and I'm actually planning on planting another here. So there is a couple trees, the very best trees that I have, where I haven't gotten around to producing more clones of them. But I will, and you'll see there's some spots where we're actually missing a couple varieties that I've yet to propagate for this coming season. So Iva's looking really good there, no damage. Sacaton Citrumelo is next here. These also look really, really good. Haven't had any issues with really most of the Citrumelos here. And you can see it's even still holding on to some leaves that didn't take damage or took very little damage. Some were burned, obviously. I don't expect them to hold all their leaves, but you could see even this one has some pretty decent leaves on it. So very surprising there. Sacaton produces some enormous fruit, so I'm really excited to see that. These plants are still relatively small and bushy. I imagine they're not going to grow super fast on trifoliate orange roots, but they should produce some pretty decent fruit. In front of it, though, we have a Sacaton seedling that I'm really excited for. This is our open pollinated seedling that we've called it Improved Sacaton. I'm trying not to use that too much because I don't want to make these claims before we actually try the fruit. But these plants look really promising. They seem to have maybe crossed with 10-degree tangerine. They're showing some characteristics, some reddish foliage, a lot of unifoliate and very citrus-like leaves and characteristics overall. But you can see it's a fairly slender but vigorous plant, and no damage even up to the tips. These have been very hardy for us here, despite being more citrus-like. So I love seeing that combination. I love seeing that they could still be hardy, at least in our region, but also appear more citrus-like, because there is a correlation between those appearances and the quality of the fruit, how good it's going to taste. Right near it here, we have the Dunstan Citrumelo, kind of similar stature to those Sacatons there. Dunstan has also done really, really well. We actually have a Dunstan specimen in New York that has survived 0 degrees Fahrenheit up there. So that Zone 7A has a relatively young graft. Dunstan is one of the hardier Citrumelos. I don't know its absolute lowest limit, but it's another one where it gets thick, has a lot of vigor, and it can put on a lot of size before it sees some cold. Now this one here is a curious one. This was germinated from seed from Mel in Pennsylvania. This is a 5-star Citrumelo and US 1279 hybrid. So those seeds were pollinated. So it's a Citrumelo and Citrandarin cross, which is interesting. And I forget, there was some spots where it had a little bit of damage, but overall it does seem to have survived. But that is something we'll notice. I saved this one because it was more like monofoliate, unifoliate, and it appeared more citrus-like. But sometimes you will notice with those plants, and I'll show you some other examples, those plants, just like we have that correlation with improved fruit quality, there's that same correlation with reduced cold hardiness. So even though we're trying to balance both and there is some wiggle room, you can reach a certain point very easily where that trade-off works against you in terms of cold hardiness. So you will lose some of that with a lot of these hybrids. Then it's just a matter of, okay, it lost some hardiness, but is it still hardy enough for here? And in this case, I think it may be. So I'm excited to eventually see those fruit, but I know this isn't really something I could recommend for like zone 7s. It'd probably be more of a zone 8 type of hardy citrus. A little further along, we have just 2 trees, which there's another one I'm going to be planting more of, because this is a very rare Citrumelo, number 82. So Citrumelo number 82, I forget if it comes from Switzerland, perhaps, but this is one of Europe's best Citrumelos, as I've heard from everybody. It's almost like the equivalent of our Iva Swingle Citrumelo, which is actually relatively new to the scene compared to number 82, at least in terms of people knowing about it. So I'm really curious to compare those, but I've heard a lot of great things. So we have a couple small trees, and I actually have a really big tree that was in the greenhouse, but it wasn't ready to see a winter. It was too tender, so I'll be adding that there. Next to it, we have US 802. This is another one where we suspect the fruit might be okay on it, but these are seedling grafts, so this is from an immature tree. So I'm just not sure yet. I suppose we'll find out. It did take a little damage at the tip there, but again, that's one of those late growth type of things. You'll see that on several trees out here, including the ones next to it here. These are all seedlings, germinated from seed from the Gerardo Boontan Pomelo that we got from Stan Mackenzie. And if you know anything about Stan Mackenzie's fruit, they are all open pollinated and they love crossing with each other. That's where we got a lot of our really cool hybrids, like our Triclemuse, Trichang Lemon, even these Sacaton hybrids, all those types of things. They all seem to love crossing with each other at his property. And yeah, so his Gerardo Boontan, despite being inside of the greenhouse, I suppose some little insect flew in from one of his trifoliate orange trees, perhaps. It seems to be trifoliate orange. Like, this looks like a 50% hybrid. And we have a pomelo and trifoliate orange cross. So still a Citrumelo, I suppose. Truer to the name, I guess. But we were able to not only propagate 3, I think, out of 4 trifoliate seedlings that we found, but these were the most vigorous and hardy. And they survived the winter quite well, to varying degrees, actually, which you expect to see. They have slightly different foliage, all these things. But interestingly enough, when you look up close at the leaves and the leaf shape, I know some more than others, they remind me a bit of the, well, maybe not this one so much, but I know some of these, and especially this front one, remind me of the Sacaton Citrumelo, where I've suspected that Sacaton may be a Pomelo cross. So it's just interesting to see, because now this is a true Pomelo cross. You can see that one has a little tip burn, a little damage there. Same with this one up towards the top. These, honestly, I wasn't sure if I wanted to subject them to a winter this young, but then I was kind of lazy, and I was honestly just caught up with so much work with everything going on. I threw a lot of plants out here that under normal circumstances I wouldn't have, but it ended up being a really good test, because they did make it through a harsh winter as small plants that were not grafted super early in the season. So the odds were stacked against them, and they survived. And well, with that kind of hardiness, they earned a spot here. So we won't find out for a long time what the fruit are like, but maybe we'll have one new Citrumelo out of those. That'll be pretty good. Now, here are some of our larger plants here. We've had these for quite a bit. We got them from Madison Citrus Nursery originally. Great trees. They always have good stuff. Them and Stan Mackenzie, you really can't go wrong with any of those guys. But these US 942 trees were really brought out by them, and I mean, now you can find them a lot more places. We even sell them on occasion too, and I really want to see these fruit this season. These trees are now taller than me. I mean, this one I think is pushing 7 feet tall at the tip, but it is just a really nice, full, well, still young tree, but it's doing really good. Same with the one next to it. We kept these, they're on their own roots and they're doing fantastic. I do have another here that's on trifoliate orange roots, I suppose just as a control and a comparison, which you can see, I mean, it is a year younger, but even then you could still tell it's less vigorous. It has a smaller footprint. So we'll see if there's any difference in fruit quality, production, any important things like that. But it does, you can see how trifoliate orange on its own isn't necessarily a dwarfing rootstock, but it also kind of is. Because standard trifoliate is more vigorous than Flying Dragon, but still less vigorous than other hybrids like US 942. which has proven to be a fantastic rootstock too. So again, really excited to see if we get some flowers and fruit this year. Cross your fingers for me, I'm really hoping. But next to it, so we put a lot of the other Sunki mandarin hybrids here. These are C57, which you may remember from this year's taste tests. The C57 was one of our surprisingly best fruits. It did really well. It had a really high sugar content, had a really unique taste. You know, had those tropical notes that I like to see. So we have it right next to US 942 because these are both superior Citrandarins that a lot of people seem to agree on. You know, while they're not like normal mandarins, they fill an interesting niche, and they're good fruit. And obviously, as you could tell by all the green you're seeing, they took, well, really no damage. So these sailed through these temperatures, I suspect, like a lot of Citrandarins, they're hardy, closer to 0. Next to them, these are US 812. Now, we have 2 trees here. I've yet to taste this one, so I haven't determined if I want to put more yet. But they're very bushy, kind of slower growing, slender growth. This has always been our healthier specimen, and this specimen has always been a bit more yellowed. And I don't know if it's just the individual rootstock it's on. I suspect, because these are all grafted on Trifoliate orange, but between seedlings you can see some small variances, maybe in nutrient uptake and things like that. So this one's always been a bit more stressed, and it has bloomed a lot more, but we didn't get any fruit set on it yet. So I'm waiting to see, but they've proven perfectly hardy here. Haven't had any issues with that. Next up, so this one, we have the Bishop Citrandarin. Obviously, one of, if not my favorite, Citrandarin. It's getting kind of hard because we're trying more and more good ones. But Bishop remains near the top. It's edible out of hand because the amount of sweetness it has, and it has less off flavors than your standard, what is it? I'm forgetting off the top of my head. The original seedling that this is based off of. I can't believe I'm forgetting. It's US 8 something. 852? There we go. Look at this. I'm terrible, guys. I'm forgetting already because I did cull it from our collection because I figured having US 852 and Bishop were redundant. Bishop's better in pretty much every way, but their growth habits, their appearance, their function is virtually the same. Bishop just tastes better. 852 is not bad, but once you have Bishop, it's hard to go back, really. So I'm just keeping Bishop, kind of like the Iva Swingle that we have up there. I'm only keeping Iva as opposed to Iva and normal Swingle. Even Dingle got cold. I did plant it at a different location, but here in our yard, I'm trying to narrow it down just to our very favorite fruit that we would personally use, on top of that I would want to propagate. Because as nice as it is having 10 different Citrumelos and Citrandarins to offer you guys, I want to offer you the very, very best. You can find the others elsewhere. If you're coming to us, I want you to have the highest quality that we can offer, both in terms of trees and varieties. So, excuse me, next we have US 1279. Both these trees looking really good. I'm going to add another. US 1279 is another Changsha hybrid, just like the Bishop Citrandarin, but came from some breeding trials. And yeah, I forget if they were doing it for HLB resistance. I suppose that's the goal from a lot of rootstocks now, but it has an interesting mango flavor. I really liked 1279, so I'm looking to put a third tree in with these, but these all did really good. No damage on them. Despite being less hardy, it's not something we notice here in our zone. So these are interesting here, and I'm actually seeing, so we'll get into that one in a second. Behind here, we do have the Myohas, Satsuma, and Trifoliate orange cross, so the Myoho XPT number 11 from Alan Bishop. These are really cool crosses. The fruit were very deep orange, very juicy, nearly seedless, but I wasn't too impressed with the taste. I've had better Citrandarins, but I did keep them because I think they have a lot of breeding potential, and I'm actually excited because apparently Alan has several more seedlings from this cross, so there's a good chance we could see something really exceptional come out of that group. But for now, I'm more than happy to keep these specimens because, again, I do think they have potential to cross with. They have a lot of qualities I'd be looking for to pass on. So we have these trees here, and, you know, they did really well. They are also very hardy. You can see even those leaves didn't take any damage. Though, you know, typically they are pretty deciduous. They'll drop a lot of them. But even at the tips, no damage there. Now we have one here that's consistently proven, well, surprisingly marginal for a 50% hybrid. That's a Trifiola. So your Miniola Tangelo and Trifoliate orange cross. And look at that difference already. You could see a lot more bleaching and damage there. Now if this would focus for me, there we go. Now as you get lower on the stem, it looks a bit better. And I suppose on here, that looks pretty decent too. Not too bad. Maybe some spider mites. I can't tell if that's spider mites or pitting on there. But you can see some portions of this plant definitely took a bit more damage, actually. That's just broken. But I don't know, the overall plant seems to be alive. It struggles some winters, and I mean, as soon as we started propagating these, we went into some of the harshest winters in recent times. So, I mean, it's been a good test to see that this is a variety I wouldn't recommend too much, especially since it's a late ripener. It hardly makes it worth it, but the tree is really beautiful. Makes really nice fruit, and if you can get them to ripen, I suppose depending on the year here, we could have a mild enough winter where the fruit could get close to ripe, but you know, it's kind of like Thomasville, where most years you're going to be dealing with underripe fruit, and you'd hope the underripe fruit are good enough as they are. But I don't think that to be the case with Trifiola, but we do have another tree. We'll throw a couple out here and just kind of experiment with them and see what they do, really. But otherwise, they're kind of a dead ends. There's not too much I really want to do with them. But, you know, they're interesting nonetheless. They just barely made the cut, really. So next here we have the Citralden, the Calamandan Trifoliate Orange hybrid. These were seedlings I grew out from seed from the USDA. This was a unifoliate specimen that appeared really unusual. But it did survive even at its small size. Again, similar to those other plants up there, I just kind of threw everything out this winter and hoped for the best, really. If they didn't survive, they didn't survive. But we had a Trifoliate strain, too, that honestly appears less hardy. So kind of interested to see how these turn out in the end. But that unifoliate one may end up being the strain of choice. Of course, I don't know anything about how the fruit will be or how soon they'll fruit. Hopefully with those kumquat genetics, they'd be a bit sooner and the fruit would be kind of decent. But not a lot is known about these. Not a lot of people really, if any that I know, cultivating these. But the next one down here, we do know a little more about, the Glen Citrandarins. So this is a seedling that I grafted, has a little bit of tip damage. The rest of it looks pretty good. A little discolored as it went through the winter. And there are some areas, actually, you know, there are some areas that took quite a bit more damage. But I don't know if this is true to type. I don't know if this is the same as like the Glen Citrandarins that Virginia fruit grower is growing. I am going to try and obtain some mature budwood and just graft those out because, I don't know, the seedlings, it seems to be kind of hit or miss and mostly miss in terms of vigor and genetics and everything. So they're not super worthwhile, but I would like to get the original one, or at least the one that more people are growing, propagated here on this property because I really liked the fruit. When I tried the fruit this year, they were really good. So I would love to have some of my own trees. But another one that did really good this year, and I feel bad for these trees that you see here. These were at the very end of the rows on the farm property where they had the worst drainage, just the worst conditions. They were the most neglected because I figured they'd be just as bad as any other Citrange that I've had. But these are the Benton Citrange, and it ended up being one of our highest scoring fruit. They were really good, where I actually want quite a bit more than just the 2 trees you see here. So I'm going to be propagating more. And the trees we have here, while they've been neglected and they don't look amazing, they seem perfectly hardy. You know, all this growth looks really, really good after this winter. So no real issues with either of these trees, but I do want to propagate more of them. And I do want to have these available in the nursery too. I think these are really, really worthwhile. I think Madison Citrus has some for sale at the moment, at least a few, but we definitely want to roll out more of these after the taste test because I was really impressed. They might be a little later ripening, for some areas, but I think it's worth trying if you have the means to, because again, it was one of our best performers, especially for a 50% trifoliate orange hybrid, and especially for a Citrange, because typically I found the Citrandarins to be better, but we found some outliers now, and that's clearly one of them. C35 is not one of those outliers. It's interesting. I kept one because I really like the fruit upon initial tasting, and they're really attractive fruit. Beautiful. But has a strong pine aftertaste, and it kind of numbs your mouth after you taste it. So while the initial flavor is really good, the aftertaste it hits you really hard. It's not very good. So I kept one tree just for the novelty of it, and I don't know, it seems to have had some promising offspring, as the C35 was what was used in Mel's trials in Pennsylvania, and we're going to get to some of his varieties really shortly because I do have some of them here. Right next to it, though, we have the Dragon Lime, which is a maybe Citrange type of hybrid. Your flying dragon, open pollinated with something. We don't know what exactly. It's an intriguing tree. I kept one. I haven't had a good fruit off of it yet, but we'll see as we have our own and as it kind of matures if we'll get anything decent quality. But it's just a really cool tree. Behind it, we have a tree I hope is going to taste a little better, and this one clearly needs to be staked. This is our Dragon Lemon, and it has also proven very hardy, not only in our zone, but also Zone 7 in New Jersey. And look at that. No damage, not an ounce, really. I mean, there's maybe one spot that looks a little iffy on this branch here. I love how phone doesn't want to focus, but you guys get the idea. This is a really cool seedling, though. Really curvy thorns, and surprisingly vigorous for a trifoliate orange seedling, but for a flying dragon seedling in particular. So I'm really excited to see how those turn out. Perhaps that vigor means we will see some fruit sooner or later. But Dragon Lemon's really cool. Next to it, so we do have some of the Conestoga selections, especially the more citrus-like ones. This is 058, which did take a little damage, but even as this, I had no hope in this wimpy little graft here, but it did make it through this winter. I have a larger graft, and I'm going to propagate some larger specimens to put out here, because ideally this is one you wait to plant when it's larger, has more caliper, because it does seem to be hardy to about maybe 8 to 10 degrees, somewhere in that ballpark. Any lower and it does seem to suffer. But it's predominantly unifoliate. You'll mostly just see those singular leaves there, which is really cool. It seems very citrus-like, but we haven't seen what the fruit are like on this one. So I'm curious to be a part of that and test this one out. 067 is another one that was more citrus-like. However, it does still have bifoliate and trifoliate leaves, but it seems perfectly hardy in our zone. So whereas that one's marginal, that one's fully hardy. I could probably take a guess at which one's going to taste better, but it's all about finding that balance here. But if we can get away with 058 and it tastes better, that would be really fantastic. So as we get to the ends here, we have a lot of our trifoliate orange type of trees are really our improved trifoliate oranges, because in the back here is Poncerus Plus, which is just absolutely vigorous. These grow nuts, I gotta say. It's actually gonna be a problem because they're so sharp, they're so thorny and vicious, but Poncerus Plus truly has like little to no resin in the fruit, which is really awesome. It's a big advantage over a lot of trifoliate orange fruit because that tends to be like your biggest detractor. So I had to have a couple of these trees. When we grow trees in the future, like on trifoliate orange rootstock, I'll probably eventually just be using Poncerus Plus, as well as these Conestoga selections here, which we have 010, which while it's not completely resin free, It is improved in flavor. I'd say it even tastes better than Poncerus Plus side by side. But again, this is actually a second generation C35 hybrid, but it just pulls so much of those trifoliate orange characteristics. I kind of just lump it with trifoliate orange at this point because in essence it's an improved trifoliate orange, and the hardiness is still really superior to any other 50% hybrid. We also have this is 026, a little more orange-like in flavor. I don't like it as much as 010, but it is also improved. Lastly is 121, which this one, its main claim to fame is that it produces thornless growth, especially towards the latter part of these branches here. I have no idea what the fruit are going to be like on this one. It's another one of those, but we have one of these to test out and kind of see what it does. But yeah, all these others are really just improved versions of trifoliate orange. I don't bother growing any other trifoliate orange now because I've just found these to be better than all of those. And while I have so many other good tasting citrus and citrus hybrids now, some of the best, I still want to have some really good versions of what some of you guys in colder zones, the zones maybe 5B, zone 6A, 6B, mostly you zone 6 guys, give you guys an option too from our nursery, because there is better stuff that you can grow too. It's not as good as a lot of the other hybrids, but it's still better. It's all about pushing everything to be a little bit better than what we had 5, 10, 15 years ago. So continuing to work on that. We do have some open space here for future varieties, some raspberry and blackberry stuff going on there. But really the citrus doesn't continue till we reach the other side here. We have some little blueberries and stuff all planted here, some pink lemonade blueberries, things left over from last year we just threw in the ground. But as we get back here, this space is still open, and I'm probably going to use it as a very specific microclimate because it's right underneath this big oak tree, which should provide some protection in the winter to some degree. And it's right near this pond on our neighbor's property here. Really nice sized pond. I've used my thermal camera, and well, it is much warmer during the coldest nights in that pond and immediately around it. I'm not sure how much the effect will really extend all the way out to out here, but I do suppose if we're going to plant anything marginal, we're better off under the oak tree and near the pond. Under the oak tree, because this will take some water away from the trees, and actually they're less likely to produce late growth, which will be a really good advantage actually, because that late growth is what really gets hurt by the cold. So if they're able to go dormant better, because they don't have as much moisture available, and perhaps the additional overhead protection and the thermal regulation of the pond, I don't know, maybe we could get away with something a little bit more edible back here, like the Changsha mandarins. Some different types of mandarins are probably what I'm going to put right here, and we'll just kind of see what they do, see if they survive. So next up, at the very back of what we have planted here so far are the Trichang lemons, Trichang lemon number 1 and number 2. Ichang lemon itself isn't really hardy here. We did test it, and while the plant could have been bigger, I think it needs a really, really specific microclimate, the right type of protection in order to make it here, because otherwise it's really pushing it for Ichang lemon. Even for these hybrids, which we suspect are maybe 25% trifoliate orange. These might be crossed with some sort of trifoliate hybrid, but I'm not exactly sure. They have some bifoliate and trifoliate leaves, but they're mostly unifoliate, which is really cool. And they have those big petioles, kind of like a lot of Pepita hybrids. You can see a little tip damage. This is Trichang lemon number 1, but otherwise it seems to have gotten through the winter really well. And actually this adjacent plant here has even less damage at the tip. And again, the rest of it looks really good here. We'll get that focused. But it's very citrus-like, which again is really promising for the flavor of these in the future. This is Trichang lemon number 2. So this one does have some small burns all throughout. And I actually thought this was going to end up being the hardier one when we were in the middle of the winter, because it did look better side by side when things were frozen solid, but it did take tiny bits of damage. Actually, it doesn't have any tip burn, although we only had one tree to compare this with, but it does have more burns kind of throughout, which it could be related to the sun exposure as well, because we are getting still full sun over here. So if it's frozen and it's getting that full sun and wind exposure, that could be a pretty potent combination, even for some hardier stuff. So it can push even those plants, but it seems like both of these hybrids seem to be hardier than I-Chang Lemon on its own. And what I really like about the #1 hybrid that we were looking at here is it has some really reddish growth at the very end, those new growth tips, which is really ornamental. So I was really crossing my fingers that that one would be hardy. We threw them out here and told them good luck, and they actually made it through really well. So I'm excited to see that. Now next here, we do have some 10-degree tangerines, one larger one here, which, yeah, it looks pretty green. It looks okay for the most part, but you can see we do have a lot of tips that got burnt back here. So a lot of the top growth got burnt back, and there is some discoloration and pitting on some of that more vigorous growth, that stuff that maybe didn't lignify quite as well. But otherwise, it seems to have survived. 10-degree tangerine can survive here, but I've heard from other people in some of these zones, you can see a gradual decline. If they go through several harsh winters, there's a chance 10-degree tangerine may not make it through all of them. And I've noticed that our tree last year took a lot of damage, and we did have to end up replacing it with these. And I got even more. I'm actually going to put a backup or two in the greenhouse. But these outdoor plants are looking good after this winter, thankfully. And this one was smaller too, so I'm happy to see that we still have some good green growth on there. So you can see all the way down to the trunk here, everything's looking pretty good on that one, actually. I feel like it saw less damage than this one, but this one pushed out a lot of vigorous growth. And I think this was the one from the greenhouse, which I'll kind of get into it more as we go down this row. Transplanting from the greenhouse straight to outside is definitely something I do over the course of a season and not towards the end of the season. All right, where were we, guys? I had to pause the video quickly. We left off 10-degree tangerine. You might notice too on this side, all along here, we don't have too many of them, but we did transplant our better strains of gumi. So we have gumi berries planted every so often. I kind of tried prioritizing some of the tastier stuff, so I put this one near the 10-degree tangerines, this one near the Yuzu, those near the Yuzu, those near the Taiwanica. Kind of put them in those areas to see if we could get some sort of symbiotic relationship thing going here, or at least a one-way beneficial relationship where the nitrogen fixing properties of the gumi in the root system there hopefully could extend to the citrus nearby. Whereas the gumi spreads and grows and gets bigger, the citrus can also benefit from the nitrogen fixing bacteria that the gumi berry will be hosting there. So I don't know, we'll kind of experiment. I am actually going to get a lot more of these and plant them not only on this side but also on that side, and see if that could help with some of our fertilizer demand, perhaps, at least when it comes to the nitrogen that these citrus will require, because they do require quite a good deal of nitrogen. So these are the seedling strains that I am the most excited for, and I think a lot of other people are really excited for here, because we are in the Triclemuse section. So this is a small graft I did this year, super thin, and even then just the very tip burns, but the rest of this plant looks pretty good. As you can see, this is Triclemuse #1. Probably one of my most promising specimens. Very citrus-like, very hardy, much hardier than your normal 10-degree tangerine, but it does have the trifoliate and bifoliate foliage, because we suspect, just like the Sacaton Citrumelo was maybe pollinated by 10-degree tangerine, that cross may have gone the other way, especially since this doesn't seem too much like a full 50% hybrid, but you never know, once you start getting Pepita and Pepita hybrids into the mix, it can actually really throw things off in terms of how many trifoliate leaves you see versus, bifoliate and monofoliate. Lots of minute differences you can notice, but the larger specimen back here is looking really good. Funny enough, this is our first season, you can tell it's a harsh winter, where I'm actually seeing some pitting along the stem there. So while it is hardier than the 10-degree tangerine, we may have found its limit, where I don't know if this is really a zone 7 hardy plant, at least not zone 7A, maybe a warm 7B like in the south here. But yeah, it depends on the conditions they're in. A little tip burn at the top, but again, hardier than your standard 10-degree tangerine. And actually, based on that new observation, I'm really only seeing this now with this video. I think that strengthens the assumption that this could be a 25% trifoliate orange hybrid. So Triclemuse, maybe not the best term, but it gets kind of complicated once you start trying to mess with all the different ways of saying these hybrids. But we'll just stick with Triclemuse for now. It's a broad classification. So Clemuse crossed with the trifoliate orange hybrid or trifoliate orange itself. Calling it Triclemuse is just easier, I suppose. We do have a second seedling of the same hybrid nature that I saved. I do have 2 trees of each of these. This is Triclemuse number 3. And this one has been quite distinguishable, perhaps slightly hardier. But then again, I'm also noticing here too some burning, some bleaching from the sun. It always comes down to that, where it's like even the hardiest stuff, we were just talking about it, you get that sun exposure in the winter, and that can make a really big difference. It's truly, if you want to plant hardy citrus or marginal citrus with the highest probability of them surviving, you'd plant them in an understory. You'd plant them in a forest with a lot of overhead protection from the sun, a lot of shade, and they won't be the most productive, but they'll have much better odds of surviving. But in a lot of circumstances where we're trying to grow these for yield, to harvest a lot of fruit off of them, we're going to have them in full sun conditions. So we would like to see that a lot of these can still survive full sun, but it's good to know if you just want it to survive and you're okay with reduced yields, full shade or partial shade is a much better environment for a lot of them. But we can see here, this is the larger plant of Triclemuse number 3. And we don't see any leaves really remaining on this. No real tip burn on these, interestingly. Just that burning that you saw there. That burning and bleaching. It's not so apparent on the upper part here. Especially this plant is just an older, larger plant. But this one's interesting because it has, during the growing season, has these big, kind of almost supple, soft leaves. Very citrus-like, but they tend to have more of like glove type of appearances, like mittens, and they'll curl in a lot. The leaves are generally pretty curled on here, regardless of the amount of water they're receiving. So it's just an interesting variety. You notice a lot of weird differences when you grow out a lot of seedlings. Some good, some bad, some just neutral and interesting. But both of these seem promising in terms of the future fruit they may deliver. I have tasted the foliage on a lot of our seedling hybrids, and I'm happy to report that most of them taste pretty decent, taste pretty citrus-like, which is a good sign for the fruit. Not always a guarantee, but it's a good sign. Let's see. We have a lot of Taiwanica stuff going on here now. I'll start with what's in front of us right here. This is a mandarin. So it is what's thought to be a hybrid between the Taiwanica lemon and either Changsha or Karaji. I would suspect maybe Changsha, but you can only tell so much. There's a lot of different forms this could take on, but it is pretty marginal here. There's some tip burn, there's some bleaching, a good bit down, but as we get to the thicker parts of the stem, they look okay. They don't look great, but they look okay. So it may have survived decently, which it's better than how it did last season. Our specimen last season, it was completely burnt on this whole side, which we are still seeing that this year, but not as bad where it's completely brown underneath the bark. That's what happened, where half of it died half of it was still alive, but the plant was probably going to decline severely in the following year. But this looks a lot better, even down to the thickest parts. These all look pretty good, so it should resprout pretty nicely. And it's hard to catch in the shade here. I'm trying to position that. But the shaded side is green, bright, beautiful, full of life. So it's only the side that was facing the sun that really got hammered. So same with the observation, we were just talking about before. But with any luck, it seems like our mandarin survived this year. I want to get a couple more copies out here and see if maybe we can even position them under the oak over here. They might do really good in the back there, because I've heard good things about the flavor on this one, like a tart tangerine, which is right up my alley. So I would really like to be able to grow this one successfully. Behind it, we have Tri. This one did really good this winter. Not noticing much of any damage on this, despite, look at that appearance. It's actually, even though I've called it Tri, it's been mostly unifoliate. It really looks so similar to Taiwanica. It's different. The leaves are smaller, a little different in appearance, but it is very hardy for how citrus-like it looks. It's those Taiwanica genes, because Taiwanica itself, we're about to get to it, is really hardy for a pure citrus. It's actually shocking. This is another Tri. I think this is the younger of the two plants here. And that looks really good up to the top. No real damage taken by these, which is really good. Again, that's another seedling selection of ours, just like Tri XL was. These were both Tri variations we noticed. And as far as I know, this is just that variation you see in those second generation seedlings. So these were seeds of Tri that now are more or less citrus-like, or in the case of Tri XL, completely crossed with something else. This was a Taiwanica seedling I was testing, and it's actually one of the few I planted out here that is completely toast. It actually reminds me of another variety I thought had promise. I was going to call it like mock Yuzu, because it was a Sakantan seedling that looked like Yuzu, and it got fried in the same way, and it looked similar to this one. So there's something about that look that I'm just, when it comes to some of these trees, I'm just going to have to use as some sort of indicator for poor future hardiness, because unfortunately this thing's just burned all the way down to the thickest parts. I mean, we get down to the lowest portions here and they look okay, but there's still burns pretty good where, I mean, this is not very hardy. It's very vigorous. I'm sure it could bounce back, but it's not hardy in the full sun. Because same thing, it's harder to see in the shade here. The back is fully green and beautiful and nice. And as soon as we rotate to the other side, burns all the way. So it makes a really big difference. This is a variety that is hardy, technically, but it has to be in like full shade. So I suppose a really good strategy actually for cultivating citrus outdoors that are hardy or marginally hardy in some areas is almost having like a shade tunnel, just a tunnel where they're all planted in, but not necessarily protected by anything, just shielded from the sun with like a 50% or more shade cloth. That may actually make a really big difference. Taiwanica here, we have 3 trees, and with varying levels of damage, but they actually, even the most damaged parts still look okay. There's still something to salvage, but the trees as a whole have a lot of good looking green stems, and I think they will bounce back probably more vigorously than 10-degree tangerine. They seem to take less damage than 10-degree tangerine, so they are hardier by the looks of it. Probably more comparable actually to Yuzu. I'd almost want to say Taiwanica and Yuzu are similar in hardiness. This I think was the greenhouse specimen, kind of following that theme where again I'd want to acclimate these over the course of a full season, because even some hardy plants that we transplanted late in the season, they just didn't have enough time they don't lignify the same in the greenhouse, so you really want to give them a lot of time. I'd probably even advise that for you guys who are receiving plants late in the season from myself, Stan, Madison Citrus. Don't plant them out right away. Wait till the spring, because really you could get a lot of there's a lot of advantages to planting early in the season. Citrus are not one of those trees where you want to plant them late in the season. No matter the size or anything, them acclimating slowly is one of the most important things. And of course, you're just buying more time for them to thicken up as well. But regardless of any of that, these Taiwanicas all look really good. And I know look at that. It has a lot of leaves still intact, which is really surprising. Again, we saw some pretty harsh temperatures. Even the Yuzu's fully defoliated. Not everyone's a fan of Taiwanica. I really like Taiwanica. I think it makes excellent juice and excellent lemonade. We've used it as a lemon substitute a lot of times. It's great in cooking. So we use a lot of Taiwanica. I had two of these, but our puppy ran over one of them. So I'm going to be regrafting some. But this is, hard to see, a 5-star and Yuzu hybrid known as Staruzu. So we germinated some seeds that we were able to acquire, and it's a really rare hybrid that supposedly is very lemon-like. And even as a young, really slender seedling that, again, probably shouldn't have been exposed to this past winter, it did really good. So I'm really happy to see that. And I'll try and get some bigger specimens grafted high up on some large rootstock. Got some more gumi next to these, which tells us we're in the Yuzu section. So we had 2 large Yuzu plants. This one I think was the greenhouse one, which again, look at that. That's on the greenhouse one. This one was acclimated to the outdoors the whole year. Very similar caliper branches facing the sun. No damage on that one. Damage on this one. So you see, this is another learning opportunity. But this one's going to have a good bit of dieback, or probably going to have to trim it back a good bit this year. It did still survive. Those thicker parts especially are all fine. But a lot of the twigs and branches are going to need to be trimmed. Whereas on this one, we're pretty much in the clear. There's not really any significant damage there. This one was another greenhouse specimen that also put out a lot of vigorous late growth. And it's technically a different strain of Yuzu too, but it did get burned quite a good bit. So it's a little unfortunate. We'll see though, it looks better as you get lower, but we're gonna end up pretty low on here. We'll see how vigorously this makes a comeback too, because that's part of what we're observing too, is how much damage do they take, but how fast do they recover too? Because that recovery can make a really big difference. And then if you get a few good winters where it can survive fully through them, it can really make a nice recovery over the years. We have our Ichang pepita here. So these in the back are the supposed juicy fruit. So these are the Ichang pepita that looks more like a yuzu, has actual useful fruit. And it, of course, made it through the winter just fine. It wasn't low enough to really push the Ichang pepita. It still held on to a lot of its leaves too, but these are also, as you can tell, high grafted on Trifoliate orange, which does seem to make a difference, mostly in the fact that we've noticed with lower grafted specimens, depending on the year, the environment, etc., that cold air that settles at the bottom can actually damage the grafts, the scions. So if you push them up further, you can kind of get out of that area of super cooled air, shall we call it. So we do have some Ichang pepita seedlings here that were a bit younger, and this one looks pretty good besides some late growth dieback. Completely normal. We've seen that in other seedlings, as you've seen. And this one actually shows quite a bit more damage and bleaching, which makes me wonder what's the difference with this one. It's less hardy, but is there any improvement in edibility? There is a correlation there, but I'm not sure when it comes to Ichang pepita. This is one of the citrus I've grown the least of. I'm much more familiar with Trifoliate orange hybrids, so we'll kind of see what the interaction is with that one. But we do have an Ichang star, so your Ichang pepita and 5-star Citrumelo hybrid here. That looks pretty good. It's a bit yellowed from the winter, but we have Citramelos that do that too. It's not really concerning. And it also still held onto some leaves, so it looks pretty good. Again, just some minor yellowing and stuff that will go away once it starts growing. Right next to it here, we're down nice and low because these are small plants. This is an N1 Trivos seedling, one of our smallest trees we planted out this year, and it actually made it through the winter really, really well. I was shocked by it because this is such a small graft, but this one did really good. And a commonality between all of them is they had really dark colored new foliage, which I really liked. I was talking about that with the Trichange lemon. Actually, even the improved Sacaton that we have, they all have that darkish foliage that likely comes from that like pepita side. And it's really attractive, really cool. The one next to it here, even it's almost more like a dark purple. But you can see, look at this, it held on to all its leaves. And N1 Trivos was supposed to be a Trifoliate orange and I-Ching pepita hybrid, but there's a lot of debate over that and whether or not there was Citrumelo and other stuff involved. I believe we've tasted an N1 Trivos, or at least a seedling fruit of it, and it was pretty good actually. So I'm curious to see what these will all turn out into. But the last one up here, this is the most vigorous specimen. Look at those really funky leaves. Large petiole and trifoliate. Really cool seeing that difference. Really tight internode spacing and virtually no damage on this plant. So all young plants, all late grafts, and they all sailed through the winter, which I'm really happy about. Carolina lime. Carolina lime, this was also a greenhouse specimen. Took a little bit of damage at the top, but honestly, given how bad the other greenhouse plants got beat up, it did really well. So this is our only Carolina lime outdoors right now, but I am going to be adding other grafts and other trees here because this is one of my favorite trees. Thank you to Stan McKenzie for making this one available. And we're going to get into another tree that he also took a big part in the U.S. But the Carolina lime's pretty awesome. You know, thought to be a clementine trifoliate, back crossed with clementine again, one of those funky hybrids, but the fruit are so lime-like, and actually, most people I've had try them, including myself, might even say they're better than actual limes. They have a little sweetness and something interesting about them. They might be more approachable to a lot of people. Not quite as bitter, but they do have that limey taste. Look at that, even the small twigs look great. So this tree looks really good. I do believe it's hardy in our zone 8A North Carolina here, so that's really cool to see. We have some open space for more Carolina limes. I forgot to mention too, the other side you might have noticed, we don't have any Monticello Citrumelo. That's another one that's going to be added here as we get them propagated. We have a single Morton that survived last year. We had a bunch of small grafts the year before that we threw out in the winter and did not do as well. I actually wonder, it looks like, if you guys can see that, the very tip of that may be trying to grow. That's not good. It's a little too early in the season for that Morton, but you know, we'll see what happens, I suppose. So Morton looks like it might be starting to wake up. We're going to be planting more Mortons out here, as well as we have a strain of Morton that's supposed to be improved. Not everybody likes Morton. I find it to be like an interesting orange grapefruit type of mix. I thought the fruit were pretty good, seedless, large, etc. But we only have one that survived that first harsh season because the plants were too small. So we're going to get some larger specimens out here to accompany this one. Right next to it, we have some tall Thomasvilles and a Clementine and Thomasville hybrid that supposedly the fruit aren't great on, but it seems actually pretty adequately hardy. And you know, I'm also noticing some of these are all like sprouting out now. That's really not good because that means some of these varieties we've noticed are being fooled by this false spring. You never know. It could stay warm, but odds are we're going to see some more freezes before this winter is over, before we really get into spring. So I'm not too excited about some of these waking up early, but you know, that's just how things get filtered out here. We're not going to help them any bit. If they wake up and get zapped by the cold, it's just not a variety that's worth growing for us. So these Thomasvilles, I mentioned in a previous video, these are high grafted on Trifoliate, and these were Thomasville seedlings. So by doing it in this way, which it seems to have maybe worked, we get a lot more vigor and no fruit production in those first couple years, which is what I was trying to avoid. These would go straight to fruiting. They'd be like 1 or 2 feet tall. They'd be the size of that Morton there, pump out a dozen fruits and barely grow for the season. And that was not sufficient for me. I experimented, and we have a Thomasville going into the greenhouse on Citrumelo roots that did better. but still didn't do nearly as good as these, where these only focused on growth, no fruit, and they got really tall, taller than me. And that helped us attain a thicker caliper, get more size leading into the winter, which is what I want, because the twigs were too thin and they were getting damaged in winters that they should be able to survive easily. But you can see we still see some pitting on the thorns and the stem there, but otherwise it looks thick and green and ready to bounce back. It looks a lot better than last year, and that goes for both of these specimens here. You can see they're both pretty similar. So this is my strategy for Thomasville if you want to get it to have a better likelihood of surviving if you're in an area where it's just trying to fruit and it's not growing and you really need that growth. I strongly recommend growing it from seed, and the roots aren't always the strongest. So in that case, grafting the seedling, the juvenile budwood, onto a large rootstock, you just get growth. So you can get that Thomasville to get nice and big before it starts fruiting. And with any luck, in a couple years, we'll have some really nicely sized Thomasville trees with loads of fruit on them. I have no problem with them fruiting once they're larger, but not right now. I don't need them that bad. I want these trees to survive above all else. Right here we have a surprise survivor, which we can finally see what damage it did take. But this we did a video on. It's the Aromo orange, so your Aromo citrus and orange hybrid. And observing after the cold here, it does have some burns on some small twigs. A little bit of dieback right there. But honestly, for the most part, the rest of this plant looks really, really good. It actually survived a winter down to, just around 10, 12 degrees Fahrenheit. So in that range is really impressive and more than I expected from it. So I will be planting an Aromo mandarin next to it, and we're going to see how both of those varieties do in the coming winters. But if they can truly survive out here, that gives us something that is very, well, it's unique in appearance, and having any type of Australian citrus growing outdoors, in colder climates is just like, it's really crazy. It's not something you'd normally be able to do, normally be able to accomplish. So I'm really excited by these, and I want to do some breeding with them. So I'd love to see if Aromo mandarin is also hardy out here, but really promising that something with no trifoliate, no pepita in it, survived the winter so well. Now, what I suspect really helps these too, because it's a big problem in our climate, is we have a lot of winds and sun in the winter, and it seems resistant to desiccation and resistant to that bright sun, which helps with some of the bigger problems that our citrus are encountering besides just the cold. So I think it has a really strong chance of surviving in the long term here if it's able to obtain sufficient size. So I may have quite a few more Aromo citrus growing out here than I originally expected, because myself and a lot of other people were pretty skeptical about that one. Now, next up here, this is another rare one. This is the HRS 899A. So this is essentially a US 852 second generation hybrid, which is much more citrus-like. It's completely unifoliate from what I've observed. And as you can see here, it did really well through the winter. It's still really bright green. I don't think I'm seeing hardly any damage. Maybe that's the only bit there, that little tip. But the plant looks really, really good. So I was surprised with how hardy this one was. I expected a little worse of it, honestly. So I may have to get another clone of the 899A out here, because this is my only one. And this is a really rare plant here. I probably shouldn't have taken this gamble, honestly, because it's my only one. But, we did it and it succeeded. So that's really great. And that's a great testament to this variety. I've heard it tastes quite a bit better than US 852 because it is a lot more traditionally mandarin-like. So it gets really interesting here because everything onwards from 899A is all Prague Chimera. All these little grafts here, some larger, some smaller. And we have a couple Prague seedlings too, which I want to talk about because I want to propagate copies of both of these now that they survived the winter. I kept these two, and I had a third, but it was very trifoliate, so I planted at a different location just for the heck of it. I didn't want to cull it completely, but I didn't suspect it'd be as good as these. And again, we're trying to prioritize our space to just have the best of the best. These both had very Satsuma-like leaves as they grew and matured. This first one is much more Citrandarin-like. It seems a lot more like a traditional 50% Trifoliate orange hybrid. Kind of has these really weird nodes on them. It just looks strange, but no damage on it at all. Pretty vicious thorns and everything. Slower growing. It stopped growing pretty early in the later part of the season, if that makes sense. So really good dormancy, actually, which is a great quality of it. So I'm hoping the fruit are kind of decent. The foliage didn't taste incredible, so I don't know. I don't know what to think of this one yet, but again, the leaves looked very Satsuma-like, which is very curious about these Prague hybrids, because the Prague Chimera should just have Satsuma seedlings, but it actually does seem capable, and it does produce regularly hybrid seedlings. Seedlings that appear to be hybrids between the Satsuma and Trifoliate orange half. But what's even more unusual is in some cases like this seedling, which we have here, it's very vigorous, by the way. Very vigorous. It reached over 7 feet tall in just a season. It was high grafted. It got a head start, but still, it's super vigorous. And it's almost, I shouldn't say indistinguishable, but it's close. It looks very much like a Satsuma mandarin. The foliage is very, very similar. Large broad leaves, defined veining, all this stuff. The foliage also tastes pretty pleasant for a Trifoliate orange hybrid. And it's mostly unifoliate. It does produce bifoliate and trifoliate leaves, but more frequently than not, it'll have large spurts of just unifoliate growth. And now sailing through this winter, it seems to perform almost similarly to Thomasville. It did have some burns up here, some areas there where you could see we had some tissue damage, but mostly just it had this pitting, which isn't too bad. And especially as we get lower on the trunk here, it looks pretty decent. So this is definitely going to bounce back. Its absolute limit's probably in the 5 to 10 degree range. So I'd say it's probably similarly hardy to Thomasville. So not the hardiest thing ever, but I suspect the edibility is going to be pretty good on this one. I have a really good feeling about it based on its visual appearance and even its hardiness, because it is less hardy, so odds are it should taste a little bit better, because that's just how it's tended to go. In fact, if you haven't seen it already on our website, we did do an updated fruit quality versus cold hardiness graph, and we have all of the data entries and everything available for you to look at. So if you want to see what I'm talking about this relationship between cold hardiness and fruit quality, you can check it out on our website, themulberries.org. It's completely free to use. There's no ads, nothing like that. It's just free resources for you guys to learn more about cold hardy citrus. And from what data we've collected, because we've collected a good bit of data on these fruit, been able to try so many and trial so many. And we're really putting together some really interesting trends, some correlations between these factors. And it's helping us narrow down and have realistic expectations for what to expect from these hybrids and how far we can really push those limits. So, that's a whole other conversation, but I just wanted to make sure you guys knew about that. Another Gumi here next to me trying to trip me. And so these are all, beyond the seedlings here, these are all standard Prague Chimera. We have a bunch of these just because the Prague is, well, it's the Prague. It produces Satsuma fruit on essentially a hybrid plant with hybrid hardiness. Good down to around 0 probably. We have this large plant from the greenhouse, which further demonstrates the phenomenon that I was noticing. See a little burning there, but really, look at some of these twigs. Burnt to a crisp at those ends. Really, really bad. Now this plant came out of the greenhouse. Obviously the base and those thick branches still look good, but we're going to have to prune this one a bit during the growing season. But this was my largest Prague specimen. All of our greenhouse specimens just grew so much bigger. They had a lot more heat and a longer growing season inside the greenhouse. So they attained some really nice sizes. I wish all of these little guys, which honestly they're kind of hard to see from that angle. Now you can see them better. I wish these were as big as that one, but a couple more years, I suppose. So it can make a really big difference cultivating stuff in greenhouses. And honestly, if I had even more space, I would be trialing a lot of these seedlings in greenhouses because they'd reach, such a larger size, again, you get like a 1 or 2 year advantage over these outdoor grown plants. It's just the conditions and everything are perfect for it. And that's typically what they do when they're applying that rapid evaluation system. But we do have some interesting experiments towards the end here, because this property, we do have a septic system and a septic drain field that we're kind of conscious of. And so this kind of tapers out where things start to develop over here, and we don't want to be too close to that. But these are all Prague Chimeras grafted onto different interstocks. So this one, for instance, is a Tri interstock. So that's Prague grafted onto a Tri stem, grafted onto Trifoliate orange. Or this one's a 5-star. So it's Prague grafted onto a 5-star stem. See that bud graft there? And then it's side veneer grafted onto Trifoliate orange. And that trend continues. We have Swingle, we have 942, we have X639. We have several different prominent rootstocks that are not only hardy outdoors, but also some of the more vigorous rootstocks. Because we're trying to see if we can improve the overall health, quality, production of the Prague Chimera by utilizing these interstocks, seeing what kind of effects we can promote by having that interaction going on between the grafts and the rootstock. So just something I was curious about and I wanted to trial. I had some theories about it, so we're putting it to the test. But really, once we reach the Pragues here, that's the end of this row, and that's everything all together. We will have another section that will be tourable in the near future. And you can see as it's developing, we have some of the arches going up now. This is going to be our future greenhouse. Really, in the next month or two, we'll have this completed. It'll be wrapped in plastic. And you can't see now, we have several dozen more hardy citrus and normal fruiting citrus trees that will be planted in ground on either side here. And in the very back, which I could show you guys as we circle around here, we have, we're going to have some shelving that we're building. So we have these metal grates here that we're going to be using as like heavy duty shelving that can drain, and that'll go on this back wall where it's kind of more shaded back here. And this is where we'll have a lot of our nursery stock. So we're going to have a pretty good area for just producing nursery plants that we'll be selling on our website. And then the rest of the space will be devoted towards fruiting varieties and stuff we could use for hybridizing and cross-pollinating inside here, where it's going to be not fully climate controlled, but controlled a bit better. And we also have a nice garden bed here that we'll be using. Mrs. Mulberry will be growing us some nice veggies in here. So it'll really serve several purposes, because this back section will be for our nursery. The rest of it will be for fruit production and hybridizing. And again, that fruit production may find its way onto our website. We may offer some really tasty homegrown citrus bundles to sell in the future. And on top of that, we'll have vegetable production and stuff for ourselves. It is going to function too similarly to how the smaller greenhouse we had on the farm property did, where actually in this corner, where it's going to get the most sun exposure, because this is south, so the sun will be coming around this way, and this corner will be heated up the most, and that's where we're going to have this. It's either 350 or 400 gallons of water that can fit in this reservoir here. And we're going to have that reservoir in this corner here, have some of our more tender citrus like our lemons and limes near that reservoir, and it'll get progressively hardier and less solar demands, I guess, the further away from this corner you get. And we'll have it working together like that, where we'll actually connect our gutter system to the reservoir, have it be able to fill up and overflow and water the stuff in here. And that containment, that water will act as a thermal ballast. It'll help control the temperature in the greenhouse. So this much water should help us still keep this greenhouse, above, say, 25 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't know exactly, because it is a taller greenhouse than the last one, and it was able to keep the last one above freezing for the most part, above 30, 31, 32 degrees Fahrenheit when it got down to 10 degrees Fahrenheit outside. So any effect this has on the temperature in the greenhouse will be great, and especially on the stuff in close proximity to it, it'll have a really big advantage. We might even be able to grow some tropical stuff like some passion fruits and passiflora edulis, so the tartar one, which I really like that one. I had ideas about planting it underneath here, and perhaps the temperatures would be just right where we could grow the passion fruit out, and then in the winter it would die back even inside the greenhouse. But it'd be just warm enough where it is near that water to keep the roots in the bottom of the plant alive. So that's just our theory. But again, we're working on this now. I'll be building a lot of this today, and we should have some updates kind of on the process. Maybe I'll even do another video on how much it cost us and the kits we use, things like that, because there are some really good resources for building your own greenhouse, and especially of the scale that we're looking for. We couldn't find ones that were very affordable, really. So that could be a whole other interesting topic for us to talk about. But I feel like this is getting to be pretty long, so this is probably a good point to stop. Let me know what you guys think of what we have out here. What are you up to with your hardy citrus? How have you guys been doing? Because we got off easy. Our winter's kind of coming to an end. It's slowing down. We got a lot of snow and ice and cold temperatures. It was tough, but not as tough as what a lot of you guys are still going through. So let me know how things are going for you and how your citrus are performing. Every area you're going to have different stuff that you can grow to varying degrees of success. But winters, as tough as winters like this can be, they're really great for pushing stuff to its limit and really being realistic about what you can grow, figuring out what you can grow and with what strategies. Because not only do the varieties matter and the types of citrus you grow matter, but also the types of strategies you employ. And you might find that one strategy will work better than several others in your area for any type of winter. So anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed this tour. It was nice to show you guys what we're finally working with out here. Obviously, we still have a lot of small plants, and they don't look like much in the winter, just a bunch of sticks right now. So this will be nice to do like a spring or summer tour when things are looking fluffy and alive and green again. And maybe we'll see some cool flowers and fruit going on. I'm looking at you, US 942. Maybe we'll see some stuff like that. But I hope you guys enjoyed this one. It's been a long time coming. So let me know your thoughts in the comments as always. And I'll sign out here. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.